Pearl Harbor. About the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was a swift and unexpected event for the American Navy and forces. Most Americans spent the day relaxing, completely oblivious to the threat headed their way. At 8 a.m. on that Sunday morning, hundreds of Japanese fighter planes descended on the base, where they managed to destroy or damage nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships and over 300 airplanes. More than 2,400 Americans died in the attack, including civilians, and another 1,000 people were wounded. The day after the assault, President Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan on December 8th. Impact of Pearl Harbor attack. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor destroyed nearly 20 American ships and more than 300 airplanes. Dry docks and airfields were likewise destroyed. Most important, 2,403 sailors, soldiers, and civilians were killed, and about 1,000 people were wounded. But the Japanese had failed to cripple the Pacific Fleet. By the 1940s, battleships were no longer the most important naval vessel. Aircraft carriers were. And as it happened, all of the Pacific Fleet's carriers were away from the base on December 7. Some had returned to the mainland, and others were delivering planes to troops on Midway and Wake Islands. Moreover, the Pearl Harbor assault had left the base's most vital onshore facilities, oil storage depots, repair shops, shipyards, and submarine docks intact. As a result, the U.S. Navy was able to rebound relatively quickly from the attack. Causes and effects. With over 2,400 Americans killed at Pearl Harbor, the nation regrouped and declared war on Japan the very next day in a near unanimous vote in Congress. Despite Japan's efforts to destroy the American fleet, most of the battleships returned to service and went on to play vital roles in major battles in the Pacific theater. After the Pearl Harbor attack, and for the first time during years of discussion and debate, the American people were united in their determination to go to war. The Japanese had wanted to go to the United States into an agreement to lift the economic sanctions against them. Instead, they had pushed their adversary into a global conflict that ultimately resulted in Japan's first occupation by a foreign power. On December 8, Congress approved Roosevelt's declaration of war on Japan. 3 days later, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, declared war against the United States. For the second time, Congress reciprocated, declaring war on the European powers. More than 2 years after the start of World War II, the United States had entered the conflict. There's many reasons why Japan sent an attack group to cripple the United States Navy. It helps to look back through the months leading up to that day of infamy. Joining the Axis powers, Japanese troops didn't join the fight in Europe, but Japan did have a pact with Germany and Italy. Signed on September 27, 1940, the tripartite pact bound the three nations together in a mutual defense agreement mainly against the United States. It's believed that Japan signed it as a means of keeping U.S. forces from joining the Allies. The trade embargo, considered one of the major reasons Japan went after the United States. The trade embargo seized delivery of oil and other important resources necessary for war, which of course infuriated Japan's leaders. Displeased with the aggression the Japanese had been showing in Asia and the Pacific, the United States joined the United Kingdom in cutting off Japan's supply of oil and froze its assets within the U.S. Japan's march through Asia. By 1939, Japan had shown that it was able to rip through Asia and desired to continue to do so without involvement from an outside power. Knowing that the United States could pose a military threat in the expansion throughout Asia and the Pacific Islands, Japan started to ponder a preemptive strike against the United States. In August of 1939, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the mind behind the Pearl Harbor attack, took command of Japan's combined fleet. Signs of aggression. In early 1941, Yamamoto approached other officers about an attack on Pearl Harbor, and within a month, the United States received a warning from Joseph Grew, the American ambassador to Japan, that an attack on Pearl Harbor was being planned. Since American military experts believed Japan would strike Manila in the Philippines, his warning was ignored. By July of 1941, Yamamoto finalized the attack the plan to attack Pearl Harbor and began training his fleet. 2 months later, American intelligence intercepted and decoded a message between Japanese naval intelligence and Japan's consul general in Honolulu, requesting the location of the battleships at Pearl Harbor. The intercepted message was ignored. The last straw. A month prior to the attack, Japan sent a diplomat to Washington to negotiate the nation's expansion in Asia. If the United States refused to accept this aggression, Japan was well prepared to launch the surprise attack. By 7:55 on December 7, 1941, the first wave of Japanese fighters launched assault. For approximately 2 hours, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor in hopes of crippling the U.S. Navy, which led to the attack of Pearl Harbor, which led United States of America into World War II.